Imagine a single day that erased nearly 2 centuries of blood, faith, and empire from the map. A day when the walls of a great city shook beneath the thunder of siege engines, and the very fate of the Christian world in the Holy Land balanced on a blade's edge. The year is 1291. The city is Acre, the last jewel of the Crusader kingdom of Jerusalem. Behind its walls are Templars, Hospitallers, merchants, and families who have known nothing but war their entire lives. Outside stands an unstoppable Mamluk army, hundreds of siege machines ready to turn the city to dust. What happened over the next 6 weeks was not just a siege. It was the brutal end of the Crusades in the Holy Land. A desperate last stand, drowned in blood and fire. And a battle so fierce that even the victors remembered it with awe. This is the forgotten battle that ended the Crusades. For almost 2 centuries, European crusaders had carved out fragile kingdoms along the eastern shores of the Mediterranean. A patchwork of castles, ports, and holy sites wrestled from Muslim rulers. But by the late 13th century, these crusader states were dying embers. Antioch had fallen. Tripoli had been crushed. Only Acre, rich, fortified, and defiant, remained as the Christian foothold in the Holy Land. To the merchants of Venice and Genoa, Acre was a gold mine. To the military orders, the Templars, Hospitallers, and Teutonic Knights, it was the last bastion of God's kingdom on earth. And to Sultan al-Ashraf Halil of the Mamluks, it was unfinished business. The Mamluks were not a kingdom of soft courtiers. They were forged in war, former slave soldiers from the steppes, trained from boyhood to fight and die with absolute discipline. By 1291, Halil commanded one of the most formidable armies in the medieval world. Tens of thousands of warriors, hundreds of siege engines, and ships to blockade the harbor. When they marched on Acre in April, the earth shook beneath their boots. On April 6th, the siege began. Massive trebuchets, some capable of hurling 300-pound stones, slammed into Acre's walls day and night. The Crusaders answered with their own artillery, raining bolts and stones on the attackers. At first, the defenders laughed at the enemy's efforts, confident that Acre's walls had withstood worse. But Khalil's army was relentless, and they were building something far deadlier than a simple breach. The Mamluks dug tunnels beneath the city, filling them with combustible materials to collapse the walls from below. Siege towers, towering wooden monsters, crept closer each night. Inside the city, food grew scarce. The cries of the wounded echoed through narrow streets. And yet, the Crusaders held on, sending desperate messages to Cyprus for reinforcements that would never arrive in time. On May 18th, the inevitable happened. A section of Acre's outer wall crumbled under the pounding of siege stones and the explosion of fire beneath it. The Mamluks surged through, their green banners whipping in the wind. What followed was no orderly battle. It was slaughter in the streets. Knights fought shoulder to shoulder, buying time for women and children to flee to the harbor. But panic took hold, and the harbor became a scene of desperation. Ships overloaded with refugees pushed away from the docks, some capsizing under the weight. Templars and Hospitallers fought to hold the line, knowing they would not live to see another dawn. Some chose to die on their feet rather than face capture. Others prayed in the streets as the Mamluks swept forward, swords red in the firelight. A handful of survivors retreated to the Templar fortress by the sea, a fortress so strong that even Khalil's men hesitated to storm it. For 10 days, they resisted, cut off from the world, surrounded by the bodies of friend and foe alike. When the Mamluks finally broke in, the fortress collapsed into the sea, taking the last defenders with it. With Acre gone, the Crusader states ceased to exist. The survivors fled to Cyprus, and the dream of a Christian Holy Land died that day. For the Muslim world, it was a hard-won victory over 2 centuries of invasion. For Europe, it was a wound that would never fully heal. A reminder that empires rise and fall, and even the mightiest walls cannot stand forever. But the Siege of Acre was not the end of the crusading spirit. In the shadows of history, plans for one final campaign were already taking shape, and their failure would change Europe forever.